heard of Merb? Who has used Merb or programming? A couple? Okay, so this is sort of an introductory talk about Merb, but and it has a twist at the end, because when I started with Merb, I was really looking for like a alternative to Rails, and being kind of like, the rebel, like I don't want to use Rails anymore. Everybody uses Rails, It's the mainstream at this point. So my talk takes a little turn at the end. So this is called Merb taking off the training wheels. The original person to come up with this analogy was, I actually finished my outline and then searched around on Google for like similar talks, and someone had used this analogy. Like, whoa. So people are on the same page. I'm Jordan the Breeze Fowler. The reason I'm called the Breeze is because I'm a infrequent freestyle rapper, depending on how much I have to drink. Hopeless entrepreneur and a pragmatist. So when I look at a problem, I like to think about the most efficient way to do it, quickest, and the most aesthetically pleasing. And you can find me at jordanfowler.com. Okay, so if this is Rails, right? Take a good look. Right? Then this is Merb. Right? So it's high performance, highly purist, and it's definitely provocative. It's a web framework written in Ruby. The state of the project currently is there's a public gem, and that's at version 0.5.3. And then the current edge, which is unstable, trust me, it's seriously unstable, is at 0.9.1. But it's like, there's such an active community behind it. Things change all the time, so seriously, it's very unstable. Merb the framework, this is kind of how it's put together. At the base level, there's this new library called Rack, which kind of abstracts the interface between your web server, whether it's what is the new one, Ebb, Mongrel, FastCGI, etc. It abstracts that interface so that you have one clean interface on your framework side. So on top of that, you have Merb Core. Let's see, what was it? 0.9. They took Merb as it was in 0.5, 0.3 up until then, and they split it off. So Merb Core is kind of the name implies, the core parts of the framework, handling requests, giving back a response, handling cookies, sessions, basically action-packed in Rails. And then there's Merb More, which is everything else, kind of like form helpers, tag helpers, mailer, all that kind of stuff. And then even further, we haven't even talked about, like active record or your ORM level, and that's handled with just completely external gems. So some of those are like data mapper, active record, SQL, and so there's gems written specifically for Merb to interface with those other libraries. So the goal of Merb is keep everything separate and clean and as high performance as possible. The Merb Core by itself basically is it's very small, and it just sits on top of Rack, and you can basically write an application in a single file. And like if you want to do a really fast file uploading, just write it in one file, handle uploads, do your processing. You don't even have to load up the framework. So, and it's thread safe, unlike Rails. Because Rails is built with CGI.rb. It's like the old library that handled, just taking query parameters, storing sessions, all that kind of stuff. But it's wrapped up in this huge, it's not thread safe. It's just a huge script that's just ran from top to bottom, and there's no threads going on or anything. Single process. So that's nice. Merb Core handles all that. And move on. So I'm going to just start right now by showing you how to generate a Merb app. Merv Gen is when you install the gem, it installs two apps not apps, but actually executables in like user local bin. Merv Gen is your generator, which does the same thing as script console, or script generate, right? Same thing as script generate in Rails, so you can generate like controllers, models, etc. But they also use it for generating Merb apps. And before 0.9, it was just the Merb command, but now there's two. There's Merb and Merv Gen. See, so like within the last 2 weeks, that's changed, right? So Merb starts your server. Merb-I is IRB to like mess with your environment in a shell. So yeah, let's start up now. Okay. I would definitely recommend getting just get the source straight from their repository, because 0.5 is just like totally deprecated at this point. So I'm going to run 3 commands here. Git clone the source. Git is, I don't know if you guys, who knows about Git? Or Git. You get a Git? Git, right? It's kind of an alternative to Subversion or TVS. Truly distributed though, so it's a pure stream. So we're going to rake install Merb Core. And we're done. So we have Merb Core. It's really small. Pull the source. Rake install it. Now, let's see. The next one is the same process, but for Merb More. This process can be found on merbivore.com. This is a little bit bigger. Merb More is a series of gems, not just a single gem, broken into Merb Action Args, Merb Assets, and a couple other ones. The most important one here is, I would say, Merb Assets. That's things like link to, like that you take for granted. But if you start writing an app and you're like, hop in a view and you're like, all right, going along. You type link to, you just want to create a hyperlink. It'll blow up, like exception, no method found. So you need to remember to include this gem. So we have Merb Core, we have Merb More, we have both those installed. And now we're going to just generate, is this big enough? Probably not. Merb Gen, test2, change directory, and open. So there we have our app. We change into that directory. Now we'll open. Yeah. So that's the default test framework. Okay, so we've generated our app, and I'll show you Merb I. So it's basically just like script console. The nice thing is, remember, like in Rails, to find out the root of your app, you have to use just like some random constant, right? Rails root. The problem you have there is like, I kind of prefer having a module in Ruby that kind of exposes all your environment variables to you. And that's exactly what Merb does. So it's like, Merb is the module, the only thing you need. And the root of Merb would be that. So this is where the kind of thorough thoughtfulness has gone through, and these little things really make it easier to program in the framework. Merb, so if we go methods, just see some of the methods that probably completely pointless. But yeah, so you have all your variables there. You don't have to remember 10,000 constants and use those. Okay, so where was it? So we generated a Merb app. The anatomy of a Merb application has changed quite a bit from 0.5, 0.3 till now, which is 0.9, 0.1. Currently, because of the constant development, the anatomy is always changing, like I said. So right now we have At the root, we have app, we have config, we have public, spec. That's it. There's a lot missing, like if you're used to Rails. And basically all those are pretty much exactly the same as you'd find in Rails, those directories. So here we are, we just generated that app, and what do we have? This is pretty much the same. Controller, helpers, views, config. We've got our separate environment settings, and init is basically the equivalent to, what is it in Rails? Yeah, environment. Exactly. So included in the separate gems, they have their own generators, which creates the directories and whatnot. So just starting at the top. Actually, I'm skipping forward. Yeah. Okay. So notice the lack of a Rails vendor directory first of all, because in a vendor directory, there's basically two conventions that use, or three if you use something like Piston. You have plugins, which you store all your plugins in clearly, and then you can optionally do a Rails directory, which is if you want to check out a specific version of Rails and have that available just for your app. Merv instead uses just gems. It doesn't use its own idea of a plugin, and I'll get to why later. Oh, not later. So, by passing, you might know about this, when you install a gem, you can pass -I or --install dir option, which you specify the root of where you're going to store all your gems. So this is the directory that you want to store all your gems. And you can specify that for any gem. And the nice thing is that wherever it installs it, it'll create the directory structure, and then it'll handle all the dependencies that are specific to that gem and install all of it as well. So like, why invent a new plugin infrastructure when you already have gem as brilliant plugin infrastructure, right? So that's why they did that. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So the first, I would recommend, I mean, if you're most familiar with Rails conventions, I would recommend installing the Merb Active Record gem. That'll give you exactly the same functionality as you get in Rails for models. You get your migrations, you get validations. Basically, all of Active Record base becomes available to you. So I'll just grab both of these. All three of these. That's okay. I created this exact same application just in case. So let's. So if I've installed Merb Active Record, the gem, which is the Merb version of Active Record, it's just a few little methods it needs to make the bridge between the two. If you have that installed, you will get. Okay, I'm just going to do it anyway. Merb Active Record -I, so I'm giving it the argument of where to store it. Sites. And then gem. But gems doesn't exist yet, as you can see here. So we'll just hit that. Okay, so pretend that. So here it is. So now we have a gems directory, right? We have bin. The gem that we just installed had that many dependencies. So right there's the selling point for gems versus plugins. Right? It had like 15 dependencies. There they all are. You don't have to think about it. it's in your, when you commit this code, there it is. When you deploy, you don't have to think about it ever again. So that's like a huge plus for me. I just get tired of plugins blowing up in my face, like when you deploy, you know, like, it's just annoying. So that's good. Yep. So let's generate a model, write a spec, and then make it pass. This just shows more. So that's still installing, but as you can see, like, those are all the dependencies, so now it's successfully loading all those and installing them in my directory. Okay, so I'm gonna go into my app. I'm gonna say Merb Gen model person, and then I'm gonna just start auto test up so we can check that. Yeah, I'm like. Actually, let's do test because I know I have code in there. So Merb Gen model person. So I'm just gonna type this. So no, I'm not gonna overwrite those. But right, because it's active record. Right. Oh, it's the exact same one? Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, it's the exact same syntax you're used to for generators. So now we have, we'll take a look here. Actually, we're going to start up auto test room. So there we have one pending spec, which is person should have a spec. So let's just jump into person spec. Hit that. So I have one waiting. So there it is. Person should have a name, clearly. So what happens? Person should have a name failed. Just exactly what we expected. So I'm just going to add an attribute accessor. I mean, I could go through the whole like migrations thing, but you guys all know how to do that. So do that. And we have perfect application. No failures. All right. So we've generated an app, installed Merb Core, installed Merb Core and Merb More, generated an app, installed Merb Active Record, generated a model, wrote a short spec, it failed, we wrote fix for it, and it passed. So right there, we have a very clean directory structure. Very minimalist, something I really like, and it's great. Now, what's the catch? Merb is a much-needed player in the arena of Ruby web frameworks, I believe. I don't think we should just have this one large, huge framework that's like varied entries, like right? I think we should have more Rubyism and less kind of magic. And so Merb definitely is great for that high performance. It uses very little memory and it's extremely flexible. However, once a project reaches 1.0, it's usually safe to assume backwards compatibility is going to be there. So you can kind of be sure that when you write an app and you deploy it, if there's new versions, then your code should probably run with the framework still, correct? Just there's minor adjustments, minor changes, etc. But until Merb reaches this point and the fundamental architecture decisions are kind of ironed out, I would not recommend using it for a production environment. And they're really close to 1.0, so that could be 2 weeks, could be like a month. but I definitely would not recommend it for production use. I would use the public channels. But then there's the catch, is that it's completely different now. The architecture is completely different. They split everything into gems. So your code that you write in 0.53 is not going to work. So just wait for 1.0 and then go crazy. But that's the last word. Yeah. Definitely develop on it. Oh, that's right, because it's a C binding. So the C binding actually locks the file, the C file. Or actually, it locks the binary file. But that's the reason it's not multi-threaded, is because it's C binding. But yeah, don't expect. Yeah, use SQL or use some other ORM if you want super performance. So let's do a Q&A session, like that's more code or whatever. Yeah. It's like there's JSON handlers, just like Rails, like .2JSON has all that stuff. So right out of the box, it's great for handling JSON. The what? Oh, really? Oh, because duck typing? I never noticed that. That? Okay, so Quark's like a constant. Or object. Wait. Yeah, true. Everything should Quark like an object, though. Yeah, it shouldn't Quark like a class. That's cool. So it's basically A to A. Yeah, anyway, or I know it'd be responsive. No, it wouldn't. I don't know. Anyway, any more questions? I think that was 3 weeks ago. No. That may have been a convention. I'm not aware of that. Where is that, Matt? Yeah, you see the option. Yes, exactly. should. Yeah, I'm gonna get out of this one first. Okay. Wow. Oh, so you can click. Wow. So does that still use? It doesn't look like it's using Rex. So this is. I mean, here's Rex. Okay. Yeah, let's try that. So very Python? Probably. So, oh, okay, so it's created very good. That's beautiful right there. Yeah, come on. Oh, yeah. So you're talking about, so basically what he's talking about is call then render, though? That one? Or I heard render and call, yeah. So basically you can render your content and then specify something you want to call after the body's been sent, right? So basically you can start up a thread after you send the body back. So you could do like, create like an event handler or something that's waiting for something to happen in a thread. Great. Yep. Like you could when it's done, you could set a session, set the session flash notice or something like that, so that the next request they switch down. Okay, your image is done. Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. One other thing to keep in mind, models are named the same, but some people still like to name their controllers singular versus plural, and that's bad because in Rails, if you do person controller, it's person underscore controller.rb, right? But in Merb, it uses Ruby classes as Ruby classes and doesn't make a convention for that. So if you create person controller, it's person.rb. So then if you have the model person, they collide and your code doesn't run. You can't define, you can't have two classes defined by the same require line basically. So you have to Merv Gen controller. You have to make sure you do that because Well, it doesn't append a controller to the end of the class name. Oh, what did I just do? Yeah, it's basically Ruby. It's like, wow, we're actually doing Ruby instead of. Yeah. But you have the added advantage of like render and call. And then actually one beef I have with Merb is, so Merb basically became a clone of Rails, right? But minus lots of stuff. But in doing that, they kind of said, all right, we're just, for the sake of change, we're going to change some method names. So like redirect to, right? We all know that one. It's not redirect to, it's just redirect, right? So that's just my minor little beef, which is like, did you really have to change that just for the sake of changing that? So, yeah. Another nice thing actually is exception handling. So these are like 404s, 406. All of their handling are actually a class called exception. And so you can set specific things that are kind of global to, like handling 404s. So that's nice. Routing is not the same. It's got to, it's fundamentally, slash controller slash actions, and then ID or extra parameters. That's fundamentally the same, but the syntax, yeah, it's a better routing engine. And yeah, it's a new DSL. So an example would be like right here. So the regex would be like match. You could do the beginning. So that's at the beginning of the path, right? So do like people. Actually, why am I doing this? I was. Okay, so. So you can just do regex matches like that, which is pretty nice. So yeah, it's basically just a different DSL. And I guess their routing code is a third the size of the Rails routing code in terms of the actual engine that handles it. So. Oh yeah. Exactly. So this is the URL to the main. This is where they're managing the code for Merb Core and Merb to Git repository. And this is GitHub. This company was started by a past SD Ruby member who went on the exodus to San Francisco to work for PowerSet. But yeah, this is a great company that they're starting, and it's a really nice management tool. So yeah. See? 2 hours ago, they completely changed the entire infrastructure.
That concludes this episode of the SD.RB podcast. See you next time.